yesterday was all about Europe's sovereignty in the physical world, how we defend it, how we monitor it, and how we power it. Today, it's all about the infrastructure that makes it possible, namely compute. If we had to reference Gutenberg's press, where he did not just put the technology forward to print Bibles, it was about democratizing knowledge, and he changed a civilization as such. I would say that this generation's equivalent is probably in line with AI infrastructure. And the question of who builds it and controls it is a question about who shapes what is coming next. So I think it's very suited that we are now starting off with our very first session in the Titan stage, which is all about AI Gigafactories, the hyperscale compute infrastructure that will either be built here with European components and European energy, or imported from somewhere else. As you know, the Titan sessions are very simple. We have an array of speakers, each getting 10 minutes, no panels, no moderation, just their raw insights. And that said, we are very lucky to be guided through the conversation in our first session by none other than the person who works within growth equity at HV Capital. Please put your hands together for Emma Ubrick.
Hi everyone. So imagine for a moment 2 years from now, somewhere in Germany, a hall size roughly 3 football fields, 100,000 GPUs running at full power, and they are training a foundational model that European companies, European governments, and European labs and universities and hospitals will run on for the next decade. And the data center is powered by European wind. The chips inside will be designed in Europe, connected by European photonics. The processors that orchestrates it will be designed in France. And that is an European AI Gigafactory. And that is exactly what Europe has just committed building. So we're speaking about 20 billion euros in public capital committed, with over 200 billion in private capital lined up besides it. 16 member states in it, 76 bids already submitted to build these AI gigafactories. And in the next 18 months, the consortia and the companies building it will be decided, and this will also determine our European compute future. But now let's be honest for a moment. The first wave of data centers for cloud, Europe clearly missed on that. Today, around 70% of our European cloud workload runs on 3 American companies, and SAP, our largest, is only at 2% here. And so we really learned what it feels like to outsource critical infrastructure to someone else's jurisdiction. And we all know with AI, we cannot miss this for the second time. We have to learn from it. And the good news, we are not going to, because now we are not just talking about sovereignty, we are actually building it. So brick by brick, layer by layer. And luckily today, we have every layer of that stack here on the stage. So chips, interconnects, compute on top of it, and the energy that powers it, and also a quantum frontier is on that stage today. So welcome to the Titans of Europe. And we will start with the top of the stack, the customer-facing one, and the one Europe's most visibly lost in the first wave of the cloud, and the one IONOS is fighting to win now for AI. IONOS submitted Germany's largest AI gigafactory bet, up to 100,000 GPUs, operational already by next year. And IONOS is building a sovereign cloud so that European companies and labs can run their AI workload on European infrastructure instead of relying on the US. So please welcome Dr. Andreas Nauers. He's the Chief Product Officer at IONOS and also the person behind their big AI Gigafactory bet.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and thanks, Emma. So actually, I'm done with my talk because she said everything being important, but I still can try to repeat a little bit of the key messages, right? So, you know, a while back, people thought AI competition is about models, right? Who has the smartest foundation model? who has the funniest chatbot, who is able to generate a picture with a cat wearing a sunglass, right? That's where it has all started. But this kind of framing is completely outdated. Models have been or are becoming commodities, but AI infrastructure is not. And this is changing the game. And actually, this is not surprising. Because it has always been in human history that those that control the critical infrastructure, they are also controlling the value chain sitting on top of it, right? And that's the important thing that we really all have to understand. And this means that we see something that is very, very important. We see that AI infrastructure is becoming the strategic control point of the future digital value chain, right? And ultimately, it's even becoming the geopolitical control point of the future, right? So this is not working here. Oh, it is. So for some reason, I see the wrong things here. No? It's not my fault. Okay, I see Windows Explorer. That's also very interesting. Okay, then I try to do it a little bit different. So when people... Can we go one slide back here? So you can't change this here so that I see a little bit the speaker notes that I had put here? Sorry for that. Let it like this. I have my text in mind anyway. So when people hear the term AI Gigafactory, they immediately think of data centers, they think of cooling systems, they think of GPUs, they think of infrastructure. But actually it's not so much about infrastructure. It's not about assembled hardware. It's really about the power that is lying behind of that. And the reason is having control over compute means you have control over who can train the models, right? Who can operate the models, who can put products on top of these models, and who can ultimately capture value, right? And while everybody is talking about the AI use cases and productivity and automation and all of these things, nobody is asking the much more important question, namely, who is actually controlling the foundation on top of which all of this is running, right? And please don't make a mistake. This is not a technological question. This is an economic question, right? This is even a political question, and it's actually a sovereignty question. And for Europe, this should actually sound painfully familiar because, and you said it, because we have been there. We have already missed the cloud wave, right? And now, if we look at the world we are now entering, we are standing in a situation where we are tenants of somebody else's digital infrastructure, where we pay rent, where we follow their rules, and where we continuously hope for continued access, right? And now we are standing at the same crossroads again, right? But this time, the stakes are much higher, right? Because while you might be able to change your cloud provider, exchanging your compute, exchanging your model, your AI system, and all of these things will be much, much more complicated, right? So what we can't do is outsource, once again, the foundation of our future industry yet another time. Now, some may say, come on, we have all this covered. We meanwhile know where all this data is located, and we have GDPR and all of this stuff. But this is yesterday's question. That's not the problem that we are actually talking about. It's not so much about where data sits. It's more like where data flows and where data moves, right? So if we look at the models, the question is, into which models is our data, our industry data that has so much IP, right? Where is it actually flowing into? And who actually controls, right? What is happening during the processing of this data, and who defines what the result of this processing is. And you know, most of our companies here in industry cannot even answer this question, right? They use it as black boxes, right? They use these systems that are currently being built primarily by someone else, operated by someone else, and governed by someone else. And if this does not concern you, let me put it a little bit clearer. It means that tomorrow, critical AI capabilities can suddenly be restricted, become unavailable, or shut off, right? And not because of a technical problem. That's not the point. Just because somebody else is changing the game, right? And that's the point. And I personally came up over the weekend with a term that I think describes it very well. I call this the AI blackout. And it's not a strategic blackout. It's not a technical blackout, right? It's something that somebody else is doing to us to paralyze our digital economy. So as an electric blackout might be able to paralyze the physical entities that we are working in, the AI blackout might really be strategically paralyze the digital one, right? But you know, I've now been talking a lot about, apart from the technical issues, I've now talked a lot about these technical aspects. But what I also see that people are completely missing out is that this also has, I would say, something far beyond the economic aspect. Because, you know, whoever controls compute controls the models. And whoever controls the models shapes what people see, what people believe, and what people decide, right? And it's not that these AI systems or the models that they have their own values. That's not what I'm saying, right? But they inherit values based on training, right? And so they define which information is being prioritized, and they define which perspectives become visible or not, right? And I know today many people are still Googling. But you know what will happen tomorrow in a future world? They will all use these AI systems. There is a world in 1 or 2 years where probably everybody will get his information from ChatGPT, from Gemini, and so forth. And so these systems become the interface to information. They become the interface to knowledge, and they become the interface to your reality, right? And this means that these systems become a new form of power, not because they deliberately manipulate you, but they make thousands of invisible decisions, right? And they define what matters, what is relevant, and what is true with every single question that you ask, right? So, and as most of these systems are emerging outside of Europe, it's only logical that they probably will not contain the European values and the European perspective. So this is not the point. And so this is not a debate about technology only. This is about the question, which worldviews are being encoded? Which perspectives are being encoded into these systems and which are silently filtered out? And you know what this actually means, far apart from economics? This means this is also about protecting our freedom. This is about protecting our democracy, because if not, we can be manipulated, and we can manipulate millions of people in Europe if this is out of our control. So, after all these horrible pictures that I've now drawn, how about something more positive, right? I see some of you already having tears in their eyes and think we are all lost and doomed. No, we are not. I think there's also a positive message. You know, Europe has the strongest foundation when it comes to industrial AI that we can think of. And surprise, surprise, I don't think that the next wave will be won by those people that have the funniest chatbot, even though it's funny. I think the next wave will be won by those being able to encode industrial reality into AI systems. And there's one thing that foundation models cannot scrape from the internet because it's not public available information, right? And this is the industrial knowledge across all the domains that we have built up over decades, right? Think of what we are able to do in Europe and Germany when it comes to manufacturing, blah, 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 and all these different things, right? And if we are, and foundation models that are just based on public information data, they are just not the mode anymore. Everybody can do that, right? But industrial knowledge is. And if we are able to encode that knowledge into these models, we can create entirely new value chains. And one thing that is something that is, I think, key for Europe is if we are able to infuse that knowledge, small models, energy efficient, domain specific, into hardware, into robots, into vehicles, we can really build something super, super valuable. Because then we do build AI that does not entertain. We build AI that builds. We build AI that operates, and we build AI that manufactures, right? So while the US might be able to dominate in the consumer space of AI, we might be able to dominate in the industrial AI. But there's something we need for that, and that's the AI Gigafactory. So, and I think this is critical to understand, even though we as IONOS have been, and you said it, have been applying for one of these gigafactories to be built. And honestly, if I would now tell you about the entire process, you probably would get tears in your eyes again, because this is a very interesting political thing. If somebody is interested, because this is recorded, I don't want to tell here on stage, it might limit our chances to win the tender. I think one thing that we need to understand really is that the gigafactories alone, they won't solve all the problems, and they won't be alone the thing that makes everything successful that I just laid out is a chance for us, right? Because you know what a gigafactory is if you put it there? It's a super cool and super expensive data center, right? And that's it. So what we need to do is we need to make sure we have industrial integration. So we need to connect compute into our industrial production systems. We need applications, right? We need applications that solve real-world problems that we in industry have, in logistics, in manufacturing, all of these different things, right? That's exactly what we need to do. And I don't mean that we consume AI. I talk about that we shape AI. We need to be the ones in the driver's seat, right? And this is something where I think we have a real chance, right? So the real opportunity is building what I call the industrial operating system of the future. To be very honest here and give you a very short glimpse, this process is currently running 6 months. The tender is being postponed every now and then. The financial model is being changed every now and then. At one day you are being told we are building 5 gigafactories in Europe. Now we are being told, oh, maybe it's 7. At one day you are being told they all have to have 100,000 GPUs. The next day you are being told, oh, maybe we have built different ones, right? We built some that have 75,000 GPUs and some ones that have 100 GPUs. Oh, and by the way, it's a really crazy process. And hopefully we can make the best out of it in shaping this. And what we are also very often forgetting is that this is a European initiative. And what I see is that currently every single country is fighting on its own. I think this is the wrong approach, because we can benefit from the fragmentation of Europe, with energy prices being low in the north, for example, right, and the industry being more in the center of Europe. But all of this is currently being kind of missed out. So there's a couple of things that need to be solved. The biggest problem is, and I checked it this morning, I had 123 conversations with potential customers, the big companies out there. The biggest problem is that most don't have idea what the hell to do with this technology, right? And it's not about deploying a US model and then do inferencing. It's about you defining a business model working for you. But they are lacking the fantasy of doing that. So we need to find a way to educate our industry players and work with them hand in hand to exploit the power of these gigafactories. That's the point. There it's where it will decide if we are successful or not. Now, and sorry again for the technical issues at the beginning. I hope I showed you that we have a wonderful chance, right? A wonderful chance based on the industrial knowledge that we have. And if we have the compute infrastructure as a basis, then maybe we can benefit from that. But there's one thing that I think will decide about whether we can be successful or not. And that's a very simple thing. And something that we in Europe and Germany are not the best ones in. It's speed, right? So I see the US scaling. I see China iterating, and look at this picture. That's us, by the way. We are sitting on a table, we are debating, discussing, regulating, wonderful, right? And probably we will come up with the best regulations planet Earth has ever seen. Wonderful, right? But the rest have been down to business, right? So there's one single wish that I have, right? Decide, move, exploit the power of what we have based on our industrial foundation, and then we have a chance. But not in 10 years. Let's do it tomorrow because the window is closing. Again, sorry for the trouble at the beginning, and thanks for listening, and handing over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Andreas. So after framing who Europe needs to host sovereign AI, the next question is, who builds the silicon for it, actually? And I mean, a sovereign gigafactory makes no sense if every transistor inside of it is American. So the next company on the stage is called cPearl. It's Europe's only company designing a high-performance processor for supercomputers. And last summer, they taped out their RIA 1, the most complex chip ever designed in Europe. And you probably carry it in your suit pocket every day now. And it now also powers Jupiter in Jülich in Germany. It's an exascale supercomputer. And their next chip targets straight at AI Gigafactories. And 2 weeks ago, you also signed a partnership that will make exactly this happen. So excited to have you on stage. Please welcome Philippe Notin. He's the co-founder and CEO of cPearl.
Thanks.
Go.
So nice to see you, everybody. What you said is absolutely true. If it is to spend hundreds of billion euros in new data center and it is just fulfilled with, let's say, US technology, let's say it's going to be meaningless. So in cPearl, we develop high-performance CPUs, so that this class of chips. So because a semiconductor in a data center, it's 50 to 70% of the value if you include also the memory. So that's quite critical. So unfortunately, Europe is quite behind, but we are helping it to catch up. So in a nutshell, what we do. So the company is 6 years old. We are coming out of the research program. It was so-called EPI Open Processors Initiative, which is the seeding round, which allows us to start the company. We did one of the largest Series A in Europe because we raised more than 130 million euros. And the last part of this Series A has been in June last year when we sent the chip to production. It's a mix of, let's say, public investors, EU, the French state, private investors such as Arm, Bull, and a financial one, Cathay from Taiwan. Today, cPearl is European at 80%. What we develop, it's part of our DNA, is sovereign. So it means that the R&Ds in Europe, we even had to develop our own data center to have our own compute capacity to be far away from US Cloud Act and US Foreign Intelligence Security Act, because we have to be consistent in security of the data. Our main technological partner today is Arm, because if you are, let's say, shipping a CPU, you need a software ecosystem. And today, the realistic software ecosystem are either x86, so the legacy one, or ARM, which will have, let's say, something like 1/3 of market share around 2030. We are close to 200. We did our first so-called tape-out when we sent the first chip to production. So unfortunately for Europe today, it's made in Taiwan. We just don't have any choice because there is no fab at the good capacity. And we got our first 2 awards. I'll go back to this later on for the Jupiter machine in Aron, so in Jülich, and for the French machine Alice Rocoq in France. So if we go back to the beginning, so far, let's say 99.99% of the CPUs used in data center today are American. So Intel, AMD. So I'm not talking about GPU, so NVIDIA, that's a different story. So there is no digital sovereignty, no complete independence if we don't have any local CPUs. And that's where we started. The issue is that trying to do something quite crazy in Europe is complex. And in, let's say, 2019, when we raised the point about we are going to build a processor in Europe, we have been seen as completely crazy. Mission impossible to raise the money, mission impossible to design it, to send it to production, and of course, mission impossible to have it back and to have a chip that works. Finally, the way we see it, it has been kind of visionary, because if you check the rise of, especially the rise of agentic AI, the workloads for agentic AI are going to be mainly driven by CPUs. So it means that the bet we took in investing in CPUs is the good one. Data center, the way we see it, today it's a ratio of 1 CPU for 8 GPUs. This is driven by AI training. But with agentic AI, it's going to be 1 CPU for 1 GPU, so which is quite good for, let's say, our business. So what we develop is the chip you can see on the left. We have a dedicated team also to build so-called reference design, so that the complete board, and you will see a zoom in later on. And this kind of reference design we give to so-called ODM or OEM that are building the servers, let's say a production grade. But as said, 50 to 70% of the value of a data center is coming from the semiconductor. So we can have a significant contribution out of it. Today, the players in this ecosystem are mainly in US, so Intel, AMD, Ampere, let's say, developing this class of chips. Of course, with a different class of skills, different class of budget. So we are catching up, and we have been able to catch up. If we zoom in into this processor, as said, so that's the one in my pocket. It's something like 7 centimeter by 7 centimeter. We invested on top of the equity, let's say, grant tax credits, more than 200 million euros to build the first platform, which is kind of, let's say, a giant effort. Proud to say that, in fact, with this chip, it's, let's say, so-called 2.5 integration. You have multiple chiplets. You have the one we have designed, the one in the middle, and plus pieces of memory, so-called high bandwidth memory. The interest of high bandwidth memory is that it's the compute you can have, the throughput you can have is quite enormous. So these pieces of memory are made by Samsung, but we can have multiple terabytes per second of data throughput. It's more than 61 billion transistors. It's also one of the largest silicon design ever done in Europe, which is far, far beyond what others are doing, just playing with microcontrollers at a couple dollars. Now, at the end, the average selling price for this is quite heavy, because we are talking about a couple $1,000s per unit, but that's, let's say, standard price for, let's say, compute systems. An example of the motherboards we design. So you have it on scale with the chip, which is here. More than 5,000 pins on the package, so quite complex to set up. And watch the news tomorrow in Paris and on Tuesday in the press about the chip behavior, because the first tests are let's say, quite nice. Now, this was for civil use. Now, compute is needed for civil use and for the citizens, but there is also a big need for dual and defense. And the war in Ukraine is proving it. War in Iran is proving it. So we have announced last summer a dual-use version of this processor, reduced package to be more reliable, to be able to do some, let's say, radiation hardening. We are engaged with multiple players of the defense ecosystem on this, including space, because this one has a potential also in low orbit for multiple reasons. A political one, because today the only solution of compute at this level for space and defense used in Europe are coming from US. So you know how complex it is in the export rules, and if US authorities decide to unplug us, we'll have, let's say, to face a disaster. So we expect the first shipment of this next year. It's quite close to the initial design, but I say really targeted for dual use. In terms of award and in terms of deployment, the first chip, so the one I just have now in my pocket, is going to be shipped. We expect early 2027 in the Jupiter machine in Aaron. In Jülich, in Aaron. So NVIDIA is doing the training, because today there is no equivalent solution in Europe, and we'll do the CPU on the CPU cluster for research, for inference, and for this class of this class of stuff. We got also, before Christmas, the award of the French machine Alice Lecoq, which is a 600 million euros clash supercomputer. In this one, AMD is doing the training, and Cypel will do the CPU. So it's quite good to prove the technology, to deploy it, to prove that the software is mature enough. There are some other stuff going on in Italy. We're involved in multiple projects, and part of them will end in the AI factories, or AI gigafactories. Also, let's say, being a CPU vendor, we see CPU as the center of everything. There are multiple players in Europe on a worldwide basis working on GPUs, working on TPUs, QPUs for, let's say, quantum machine, NPUs, and any kind of AI accelerators. We are not engaged with all of them yet, but the idea is say that if you have an accelerator, you have a CPU, and they will be part of the ecosystem we are creating, being in the middle. Quite proud also to say that we have been awarded by EU to create a lobby called Voices, which is going to be representative the voices of all the SMEs in Europe working on semiconductor. Why? Because there is a big discrepancies on SMEs which are fabless, like us. So we do the design and the production is done by TSMC, Samsung, or other players. And the historic actors you have in Europe, which have so-called IDM with their own fab, and they have access to huge fundings, billion euros, but only for one part of the market. They are doing it well, but now it's time also to finance fabless like us, focus on compute, AI, which is definitely the future of this industry. So now, and that's, let's say, conclusion of this presentation, what we are looking for. We have finished in June last year a Series A of 130 million euros. I'm now in Series B mode. A Series B, which is quite big, something like 270 million euros in 3 steps, 2026, 2027. So we need, let's say, the best investor to, let's say, to join us. Not necessarily only in Europe, because it's going to be tough, but we expect a European control, let's say, for this. We are looking also for the most innovative companies in Europe focused on acceleration or any kind of acceleration, tensors, etc., to join us and to be part of the ecosystem we are creating. And there are multiple candidates. And of course, because this technology has to be deployed for, let's say, all the data center, and a couple in Europe focused on sovereignty that really want a sovereign stack. So it means that the software and also the semiconductor to be with us, let's say, we'll be happy to ship the products we will have. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. So the next layer isn't compute anymore, but it's the connection between it, which actually will be a real bottleneck for future AI workloads, and all the big GPU companies, including NVIDIA, are spending billions to make this more efficient. So the next company on the stage will be Black Semiconductor. They're connecting chips with light instead of the current copper wires with a new high-tech material called graphene. And they collected over 250 million euros in funding within one of the largest deep tech rounds in Europe ever happened. And most of it to build their first fab in Aachen, the Fab 1. So excited to have you. Thank you, Fab.
I'm gonna start with some tragic numbers. I'm not sure. Do you know what the top 5 AI companies in the US investing in AI infrastructure per day? It's 1.6 billion per day. It's 11.5 billion a week. 15 billion a month, 700 billion this year already. And now take a guess what Europe has committed. And I'm gonna be very collective, so we sum up all semiconductor activities, CHIPS Act, IPCEI, everything from all governments in Europe, all private announced investments. You're gonna be shocked. Everything what we have initiated from now until 2030 is spent in the US in 2 months. So we can't forget that we play a role in Europe in that AI space. There is no AI space in Europe. There is no infrastructure. And we asked us, okay, is there a bubble? Is there something why the US folks build things like that? This is a 20 billion AI data center. They build it in tents, aluminum tents, because they cannot build the buildings fast enough. This is how they look inside. And the bubble we expected is not there. I give you a figure. In Europe, there are 18 million engineers. And if everyone needs for 100,000 euros tokens per year, this is 1.8 trillion revenue, zero in Europe, everything to the US. And that translate in an NVIDIA technology that was a gold standard for AI data center. It was a 100 megawatt data center. And it translates into thousands, 1,000 data centers would be needed to serve 18 million engineers with 100,000 tokens per year. And we speak in Europe about 250 million people who are working, and of course, US, Canada, and so on and so on. So what I want to tell you, if we go to the measure of a giga size of a data center, it's still 100, and we're building 5 or 10. We are at the starting point. It is the starting point. There is no bubble. It is going to be even growing and becoming more. And in energy expressed, this is what is committed. And I'm pretty sure that this number is not true anymore because it's half year old. And I'm pretty sure there was, in the meantime, new announcements. So in Europe, an atomic plant was around 500 megawatt to a gigawatt in energy creation. That translates into 1,100 atomic plants. You cannot build that. And the reason for that energy consumption is here. What you see is a rack of NVIDIA, and in that rack you see the H100, and in that H100 there is that center, the GPU with the memories attached. And you see that in the cross-section, that memory has to be 2 millimeters next to the GPU because the data speed is so fast that it converts into heat within 2 millimeters, and then the signal is gone. And that is the whole source of all computer bottlenecks. Because the memory chip is very temperature sensitive. If it changed by 1 degree C, the 30% of the data corruption increases. So what you have to do is the GPU is running at 35, 38% of the time. So your 100 million energy check per month is only 38% used. The rest is just giving energy into it. And the memory is deploying every millisecond all the data into that GPU, and that means there is a lot of heat generated. And this is the source of everything, because now if you sit and type something in on ChatGPT and want to have a result, not only one GPU is working on that problem. So now the consequence of that architecture is that the GPU has to write a letter to another GPU. Now imagine the whole group of us would have a conversation in writing letters, how complicated that is. And that is how these computer systems work. This is why there is so much energy needed. And NVIDIA has the advantage, they have the best post office system. This is their mold. And what we want to bring, and what the industry is now doing as a first step, they bring an optical chiplet into that package, and now that island can speak optically. And that is the first step towards a new architecture and increasing the possibility to exchange data. And the next level is to take the packages and separate them into 2 separate portions. And then you have the advantage that the GPU can be cooled as much as you want, and the memory just don't have to be cooled. And the second advantage is that you're not limited to the 2 millimeters architecture anymore. So that means you cannot only put 6 HBMs with the equivalent of 80 gigabyte of data. No, you can bring 10 terabyte of data. And then you can go from 100 papers are the source of knowledge for an AI to every paper on the planet is the source of knowledge for an AI. And then we can go and create in Europe an advantage which is outlasting what the US can do. And NVIDIA has no interest in throwing away their best organized post system. But we have to take decisions here in Europe. And that is, if you take our technology and think it through what is the end game where we want to go, then we would create an AI optimized CMOS chip architecture. Because today it's a GPU, it's a graphics processor unit. It was made for computer games. It's not tailored for AI topics. And then you put our photonic layer on top and you can create a system which is 1,000 times more sufficient than what the infrastructure is today. And we did some measurements about that. You could increase the output per data center by the factor of 50. So coming back to my calculation in the beginning, 1,000 data centers to serve 80 million engineers is now translating into 20 data centers with our technology if we look a bit in the future. So that is the big outlook. And what we are doing is we have that nice building you see here. And inside that building at the moment, excavators are working and building our first 300 millimeter fab. This is a wafer which will be produced in the end, and there are chips on it. And this is a 200 millimeter wafer because we created that in a research environment where you do not have the 300 millimeter technology available. But we have proven, and this is now settled, that the technology works. And what we created is a photonic and a CMOS layer, and then we put them on top of each other. And here you can see the results. Even you can see, not so good, but you see a bit of graphene. It's 1 atom thick, and you still can see it. And the size is 500 nanometers, so it's your hair divided by 10,000 somewhere there. This is the size what you can see. So we speak about atomic control in the end. And it's all on us. All of us in the room, everyone in Europe, it's our decisions on day-to-day basis what we're going to do. Are we invest in US technology? Are we invest in Europe or in the US? And we should rethink and strengthen our environment. And for us, physics is the limit, and we're happy to be here in the exciting times. Thank you.
Thank you. So we heard about the CPU, we heard about optical interconnects now. The unglamorous question is that quietly kills every AI gigafactory in Europe because 100,000 GPUs require roughly 100 megawatt in power. Who actually has the power for this, especially in Europe? So EnBW is one of Germany's largest utilities and also the owner of the company's largest offshore wind farm. And EnBW Infra Services was founded to plug Germany's AI build-out into grid and power. And in February, EnBW signed a 100 megawatt deal with Google to power AI infrastructure. So please welcome Christian Bolz. He is the managing director at EnBW Infra Services.
Imagine your company wants to build a data center, and you are given the task to find the right location. So you start your work. You analyze dozens of sites till you finally find the wrong presentation. 1 second. No, wrong presentation. So. No, it's the wrong presentation. It's the wrong company. Okay. So you analyze dozens of sites till you finally find a spot that seems to be right. It has just the right size, building permits seems to be feasible, data connection is in place, and you can even use the waste heat. But one decisive question remains, and this is the question that decides whether the project will die on the drawing board or will be successful. It's a question, how do we power the land? So you ask your local grid operator, and after a few weeks, you finally receive the answer. And the answer goes something like, we are happy to inform you that we can establish the required grid connection in about 10 years. This moment is not fiction. It's the lived reality in so many data center projects in Germany today. My name is Christian Bolz. I'm Managing Director at NBW Infrastructure Service, and today I would like to talk to you about how to overcome the grid connection bottleneck. But first, let's start with who we are. NBW is the third largest energy company in Germany. And what sets us apart is we are the last energy company that is fully vertically integrated, which means we do operate alongside the whole energy value chain, from energy production to energy transport to sales and trading. And this is not just an organizational detail, it's a strategic capability because it allows us to increase speed and decrease complexity. So it allows us to lease the land, to develop land with energy and data connection, and also with water. We are running telco services ourselves. We can sell electricity, renewable energy, PPAs, and we can even use the waste heat wherever possible. And we bundle everything in one single SPV so that you don't have to negotiate 10 different contracts with 10 different companies. So you can just buy this SPV and concentrate on what you can do best, building and running world-class data centers. On our perspective, there are three different ways how we can overcome the grid connection bottleneck. The first one is reusing existing infrastructure. As you might know, in Germany, due to the transformation of our energy system, there are some power plants that are not used anymore. And these power plants bring the ideal environment for data centers because they do already have the power infrastructure, the data infrastructure, the secure perimeters, and the acceptance for industrial use in place. On the image, you can see our current site we are developing in the city of Neckar-Westheim. Here we develop a data center project on the edge of a former nuclear power plant run by us. And as the decommission of the power plant continues, we can even rise within the original site. So we start with 40 megawatts in 2029, and we will be able to rise way beyond 150 megawatts by 2035. But there's not only power plants that are not used anymore due to the transformation. We also need a lot of new sites. So we are building dozens of new transformers and other sites. So the second pathway will be to co-locate with what we are building now. This doesn't happen right now. So we are building what we think we need, and you are building your data centers, but we are not talking. So it makes absolutely sense to build together in order to decrease the cost, to enhance the system efficiency, and if we combine our forces, it will help us to prioritize grid connection build times. Whereas the two first pathways were centered around the energy infrastructure, the third one is centered around the data center itself. As data centers are becoming increasingly bigger and bigger and need more and more energy, it makes absolutely sense to see them as a small city. That's what they are. They consume as much energy as a city. So why not building the energy system around it? And innovative technologies such as fuel cells, gas engines, combined with renewable energy and batteries allow us to do so. Building microgrids that work for data centers. They are not disconnected from the original grid. They need this grid connection too. But it could be a really small grid connection. Like, for example, you have a 10 megawatts grid connection in place, and with microgrids, you are able to build a 200 megawatts data center. So to come to a conclusion, in order to overcome the grid connection bottleneck, we need to transform, we need to collocate, and we need to innovate. But most important, we need to engage in dialogue and collaborate. Thank you very much.
So we already arrived at the last presentation of this session, and the Titans of Europe stage, of course, has to include an asymmetrical bed, a layer where European labs are at global frontier, and I'm speaking about quantum computing. And the next company is called Planck. They are building a quantum computer using neutral atoms and just won the contract to build Europe's first 1,000 qubit machine. So let's understand how Planck fits within the AI Gigafactory stack. And please welcome Dr. Markus Henning. He's the Chief Business Officer at Planck.
Thanks. So today I will speak about quantum computing and how we will build a quantum computer here in Europe. But just start with a problem. So there's a lot of problems out there which, say, classical compute will never solved or never solved efficiently. So here's an example. What you can see is it's a protein, and this protein is called KRAS. So this is in your body, and you can imagine it's like a kind of light switch. So when it's switched on, it tells your cells, okay, please produce new cells, and if it's switched off, they're just doing nothing. So the problem is if there's a mutate, you will build maybe cancer. So if you want to cure that cancer, we have to find a pocket, say, on this nice protein, and we have to place some molecule inside. And we have also the problem that this protein will be changing over time. So we have to find new kind of like drugs to really fight that. And if you want to do it like on a computer, we have a problem because we have to deal with quantum mechanics. So if you have to do with quantum mechanics, a classical computer, they will really hit a kind of computational wall. It doesn't matter, I mean, how big your computer is. So if you have the biggest supercomputer in the world, it can take maybe a million of years until maybe you have compute something. So it's a big problem. And Richard Feynman said in 1982, so nature isn't classical, damn it. And if you want to make a simulation of nature, you better make it quantum mechanical. So we have to find a kind of, say, a compute machine which using somehow quantum computing. So it sounds really weird, but it's possible. So now imagine, say, a Thursday, 2040 here in Berlin. We have a patient coming to a clinic, and she, say, has a kind of really severe diagnosis, maybe has cancer. And so before she gets any kind of drug, she may hand in some kind of tissue. And then we run maybe a million of different molecules against her simulated, say, biological chemistry. Not in years, maybe in hours. So, but you need a machine for that. And this is the reason, well, one of the reasons why we built Planck. So Planck was founded in 2022. It's founded in Munich. We raised 55 million Series A, and we have grown to 120 people. And so what we are building. So we are a full-stack company. And this means something, we built the hardware, so we built neutral atom-based quantum computers for the industry. We deploy them in HPC, so high-performance computing centers. They can be also like deployed in data centers. Additionally, we're building a platform so that you can access quantum compute as a service, because nobody in the industry will probably put such a machine in its data center or its cellar. So we will have a platform for that. And secondly, we are helping industry partners to build quantum-inspired and quantum algorithms, so to make them quantum-ready. So until these machines arrive, they are prepared for that. So just shortly, who's behind that company? It's a spin-out of the Max Planck Institute for Quantum Optics, so this Nobel Prize-winning institute. Here you have the picture of the founders. And we have really a nice board of scientific advisors here. These are actually the people who really discovered or built the field of quantum information, of ultranuclear atoms, and of quantum cryptography. And we also have Hermann Hauser, maybe you know him. He's the founder of ARM in our board. And so what we're doing is we are using atoms for doing really kind of complicated computation. So, and here you see a graph which may define the industry. So each line represents somehow the doubling of qubits. So qubits is the smallest, say, the unit we're using for our computation. And you see different technologies used. So there's like superconducting. This is the technology they're using like in the US from like IBM and Google. So it's doubling every 1.9 years. We have ion traps doubling every 6.1 years. There's spin qubits doubling every 6.3 years. And there's neutral atoms, which is a purple curve, doubling every 1.4 years. So it means with each year, we are staying really ahead. So it's really a kind of exponential growth here. And these pink dots there, this is what we're doing. So this is the numbers we have produced. So we're really on top of the line. And we have built, say, the world's largest qubit array with 10,000 physical qubit. We have one of the highest gate fidelities. And we have also developed an architecture which gives us really speed up in quantum error correction, which is really important really to build a digital machine at the end of the day. And so why we're doing that? Because, I mean, there's a big opportunity in the industry, because what we're doing is we are providing new compute to solve problems nobody can solve and no supercomputer can solve. So it's really fundamental. And so it goes in each industry. So it's not a single industry which is not affected probably. So here's some numbers. So McKinsey is estimating that the value generation you can make with these machines is between $1 and $2 trillion worldwide. It will probably also increase. Also, the numbers are increasing by them. And the first thing you can do with these machines is probably going into pharma and chemical in the chemical industry and doing this kind of simulation I have mentioned in the beginning. The next thing is like going in the financial industry, doing kind of portfolio optimization, improving risk management, and so on. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. And we're speaking with a lot of industry partners to speak about their computational pain, let's call it that way. Here you see the race which is going on at the moment. So we're in a race with like maybe China, with the US, who first actually get the really powerful machine. Here you see the compute power and the value created. And at the moment, we are in a stage where we have to solve engineering problems. So everything before this curve, this was like demonstrated experiments. So we have laid the groundwork. We're at this stage at the moment. And we are racing for a machine which roughly has 100 logical qubits and millions of logical operations. So when we have reached this point, this is the first time we can solve problems in industry. Maybe we can simulate a molecule, we can do something in drug discovery, in material discovery, but we have to first get this machine. It's an engineering problem at the moment. And the nice thing is in Europe, we are in a kind of pole position, because the technology we're using, neutral atoms, it's based on, say, optics. And, you know, we are based in Munich, and roughly 50 kilometers around, we have all these kind of suppliers which are giving everything we need for this machine. So everything is here. We have the scientists, super smart. We have the hardware. So it's not a software problem, like in LMM where we lost the game. It's really a hardware problem. This is something we can win in Europe. And so we have to make this kind of race here. And from that, we have to just scale. You know, then we can really cover, just really unlock this kind of value. So the race is about these kind of like the mega quad machine, but you can imagine you want to have, really fast machines. So we're racing also like for, say, the million of operations per second, and the final game is about like how expensive that is. And this is where neutral atoms really excel, because we don't need megawatts or anything. We're speaking about kilowatts here. So these kind of quantum computers, they are maybe requiring the same amount like some kind of gaming machines, so this is something you can maybe neglect. So this is a race we are in at the moment, and we have a technology at Planck which we probably can really deliver here. And so I'm not only promising the future here, we're already delivering. So at the moment, we are building 2 machines. So one is at the German Aerospace Center, and one is at the LRZ. So they have a cumulative value of roughly like 50 million. We are also like working with a lot of companies on quantum algorithms. So they have some kind of use cases, and we are looking into it and make them kind of quantum ready. Yes, so what is really our goal is building really the machine what Feynman originally described, and we built in Munich, so in Europe, and we hopefully can deliver it soon. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
And if you want to see a machine, we have a stand here at this is like the S26, I guess. So you can see the GPU. I can't bring it with me.
Great. So we heard 5 speakers, 5 layers of the same stack: compute, chips, the light between it, energy, quantum. And now before we end, I know we are out of time, 3 quick thoughts from me on it. So the first is sovereignty just stopped being just a slogan. We saw it. Europe is building real physical objects for it. The second, I think the conditions for European deep tech has never been better than right now. Many of the people building global AI were trained at European universities for it. And third, and this is what I want to leave you with, is that Europe has done this before. If we look at CERN, if we look at Airbus, ESA, Ariane, and also ASML, every one of those projects has started in a room like this one before, where few people looked at an American head start and decided to build their own. And every one of them is now world-class today. So none of that happened by waiting, and the first European AI Gigafactory will be live already in 2028. The decisions will be made shortly, and yes, Europe missed the cloud wave, but we're not going to miss the AI wave. So thank you so much to our 5 speakers today, and also to the audience. Please feel free to ask any questions if they are. And yeah, it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.